Most people do not lose their freedom in one dramatic moment. They lose it quietly, one payment at a time, one upgrade at a time, one little yes at a time, one "I deserve this" at a time, one plan they announced too early, one lifestyle decision they made before their foundation was ready. And the strange part is this: from the outside, it can look like progress. The apartment looks better. The phone is newer. The dinners are nicer. The clothes are cleaner. The photos look more successful. The person seems to be moving up. But inside, something is getting tighter. Not poorer, exactly. Tighter, more obligated, more exposed, more fragile, more dependent on the next paycheck arriving on time. And that is the trap. A person can improve their income and still lose control of their life. Not because money is bad. Not because spending is evil. Not because enjoyment is wrong. But because income without margin does not create freedom. It only creates a more expensive dependency. That is the part most people do not want to hear. They want to believe that earning more will fix the pressure automatically. They imagine life as a staircase. First you earn a little, then you earn more, then you feel safer, then you relax, then the future opens. But that is not what always happens. Sometimes the moment you earn more, your life expands faster than your discipline. Your standards rise, your commitments rise, your explanations rise. Your obligations rise. Your need to appear stable rises. And before you notice it, the new income is already owned by the new version of your life. It came in, but it never became freedom. That sentence matters. Money can enter your life without becoming freedom. It can pass through you. It can dress you. It can feed your image. It can impress people who are not responsible for your future. It can make your weekends look better. It can make your old self feel avenged. But if it does not increase your ability to choose, to wait, to say no, to survive a bad month, to walk away from a bad deal, then it did not liberate you. It just moved through your hands wearing better clothes. And here is where the uncomfortable question begins. How much of your life is actually yours? Not theoretically, not emotionally, not in motivational language. Practically, if your income stopped for 1 month, how much of your confidence would remain? If a sudden expense appeared, how fast would your dignity become negotiable? If someone offered you a bad job, a bad client, a bad deal, or a bad condition, could you walk away? If your family pressured you financially, could you help with order instead of panic? If someone asked what you earn, what you have, what you are building, could you stay silent without feeling smaller? Because freedom is not measured by what you can buy when things are going well. Freedom is measured by what you can refuse when life starts pressing. That is where the truth shows. Not in the purchase, in the refusal. Not in the photo, in the boundary. Not in the raise, in the margin that survived after the raise. And this is why so many people feel confused. They are not failing in the obvious way. They are working. They are paying. They are improving some things. They are not necessarily irresponsible. They are not sleeping under a bridge. They are not completely broke. But they are not free either. They live in a strange middle place. Too functional to call it a crisis. Too trapped to call it peace. That middle place is dangerous because it becomes normal. You normalize tension. You normalize checking your account with a knot in your stomach. You normalize needing the next payment. You normalize delaying decisions because you cannot afford the consequence. You normalize saying yes because saying no feels risky. You normalize explaining yourself to people who never earned the right to know your numbers. You normalize having money come in and disappear before it touches your future. And after a while, you stop calling it a warning. You call it adulthood. But not everything that is common is normal. And not everything that feels normal is healthy. Some people are not living. They are maintaining payments, maintaining appearances, maintaining relationships built around expectation, maintaining a version of themselves that became too expensive, maintaining possessions that were supposed to make life easier, but now quietly demand time, money, attention, and emotional energy. That is the hidden bill, not the price tag. The hidden bill, the cost after the purchase, the cost after the yes, the cost after the announcement, the cost after the upgrade. The cost after the lifestyle becomes your new minimum. Because the first price is obvious. You see it. You approve it. You justify it. You tell yourself it is fine. But the second price is harder to see. It arrives later. It arrives as maintenance, as insurance, as storage, as anxiety, as comparison, as the fear of losing what you bought, as the pressure to keep living at that level, as the need to match the new object with more new objects. As the feeling that going backward would be humiliating, That is how people get trapped. Not always by poverty, sometimes by progress they did not know how to manage. Think about a person who finally starts earning a little better. At first, the extra money feels like oxygen. They feel proud, relieved, maybe even healed in some way. Because money is never just money. Money carries memories. It carries old embarrassment, old limitations, old rooms, old conversations, old moments when someone had to say, "We cannot afford that." So when more money arrives, it does not arrive into a neutral mind. It arrives into a mind with history. And that history wants compensation. It says, finally. Finally I can buy without asking. Finally I can go without feeling ashamed. Finally I can dress differently. Finally I can eat where I want. Finally I can stop feeling behind. Finally I can show that I am no longer that person. And that feeling is understandable. But it can become dangerous. Because if every increase in income becomes a ceremony of emotional revenge, you will never build margin. You will only build a more expensive identity. You will spend trying to prove that the past is over. But the past does not disappear because you upgraded your lifestyle. Sometimes it hides inside the upgrade. That is why many financial problems are not only mathematical. They are emotional. A spreadsheet can show you where the money went, but it cannot always show you why you needed it to go there. It can show the restaurant, not the loneliness. It can show the clothes, not the insecurity. It can show the subscription, not the boredom. It can show the debt, not the fear of looking unsuccessful. It can show the gift, not the guilt. It can show the purchase, not the need to feel that your work was worth something. And if you only fight the number but never understand the emotion behind the number, the pattern comes back. Maybe in another form, maybe with more income, maybe with nicer words, maybe with a more respectable excuse. But it comes back, because the real leak was never just the expense. The real leak was the impulse that kept finding a financial door. That is why margin begins before money. It begins with a pause, a small space between feeling and acting, between wanting and buying, between earning and upgrading, between being asked and answering, between having a plan and announcing it. Between feeling behind and trying to prove that you are not. That pause is not weakness. It is control. Most people think control looks aggressive, fast, confident, decisive. But in money, control often looks slower. It looks like waiting 24 hours. It looks like not responding immediately. It looks like not explaining your entire financial life. It looks like letting an offer expire because you know it was designed to pressure you. It looks like keeping the old thing because it still works. It looks like receiving money and not immediately giving it a job in your lifestyle. It looks boring from the outside, but inside it is power. Because the person who can wait cannot be manipulated as easily. The person who can delay gratification cannot be sold every emotional emergency. The person who can keep quiet does not hand everyone a map of their vulnerabilities. The person with margin does not have to negotiate from panic. And panic is expensive. Very expensive. Panic makes bad loans look useful. Panic makes bad jobs look necessary. Panic makes bad clients look acceptable. Panic makes bad relationships look safer than loneliness. Panic makes bad purchases feel like relief. Panic makes you say yes before your mind has had time to protect you. That is why the first luxury is not a luxury car. It is not a watch. It is not a house that impresses people. It is not a trip that makes your life look cinematic. The first real luxury is not being desperate, not needing the first option, not needing to sell yourself quickly, not needing to accept disrespect because rent is breathing down your neck, not needing to borrow from someone who will later use the favor as a leash, not needing to make every decision from fear. That is the luxury nobody photographs. But it changes everything. It changes your voice. It changes how you sit in a conversation. It changes what you tolerate. It changes what you accept. It changes what you ignore. It changes what you no longer need to prove. And this is why margin is not just a financial concept. It is psychological territory. It is the space where your better decisions become possible. Without margin, you are always too close to the edge. And when you live too close to the edge, even small things feel violent. A car repair becomes a crisis. A medical bill becomes panic. A delayed payment becomes humiliation. A family request becomes conflict. A slow month becomes an identity collapse. Not because the event is always huge, but because there is no buffer, no distance, no room. Every hit lands directly on the bone. And eventually, a person living like that starts making decisions to avoid immediate pain, not to build long-term freedom. That is a completely different life. You stop asking, what is best? You start asking, what stops the bleeding right now? And when your life becomes a sequence of stopping the bleeding, anyone who sells you quick relief can become dangerous. The credit card, the lender, the fake opportunity, the easy money promise. The person who says, "Do not worry, I can help you," but attaches invisible strings. The job that consumes you but pays just enough to keep you afraid of leaving. The lifestyle that feels normal only because everyone around you is also trapped. This is why people confuse movement with progress. They are always doing something, always paying something, always fixing something, always covering something, always planning something, always trying to catch up. But catching up is not the same as building. Covering payments is not the same as creating freedom. Surviving a month is not the same as designing a life, and this distinction is brutal. Because many people are not building a future. They are financing the consequences of past impulses, a purchase from 6 months ago, a decision from last year, a lifestyle upgrade they made too soon, a promise they made because they wanted to look generous, a debt they took because they wanted to feel temporarily free, a choice they made when they were tired, lonely, insecure, or trying to impress someone. And now the present has to pay for it. That is one of the quietest tragedies of money. The future keeps paying for emotional moments the past did not have the discipline to survive. A 10-minute emotion creates a 10-month payment. A weekend of ego creates a year of pressure. A sentence said too early creates expectations you never wanted to manage. A yes given out of guilt becomes a financial obligation. That is why words also matter. Not in a mystical way, in a practical way. Words create social contracts. When you say how much you earn, people start placing you somewhere in their mind. When you say how much you have saved, people start calculating what you could do for them. When you announce a plan, people start giving opinions before the plan has roots. When you say you are going to invest, buy, build, move, quit, launch, or expand, you invite pressure before you have results. And pressure can poison a young plan. Not always because people are evil. Sometimes because they are afraid. Sometimes because they are jealous. Sometimes because they are limited. Sometimes because they love you but think from their own wounds. Sometimes because they cannot imagine what you are trying to do. Sometimes because your movement reminds them of their stillness. That does not make them monsters. It does mean you should not hand everyone access to your unfinished future. There is a stage where a plan needs privacy, not secrecy. Privacy. A seed does not need applause. It needs protection. A new habit does not need an audience. It needs repetition. A financial change does not need public validation. It needs consistency. A new identity does not need to be explained to everyone. It needs evidence, and evidence is built quietly. This is where discretion becomes useful. Not the childish kind of secrecy where you pretend to be mysterious. Not the paranoid kind where you assume everyone is against you. Strategic discretion. The ability to understand that your financial life is not public property. Your income does not need spectators. Your savings do not need witnesses. Your investments do not need casual discussion. Your goals do not need to be judged by people who are not building with you. Your next move does not need to be announced to people who will not pay the cost if it fails. That is not arrogance. That is stewardship. You are protecting the conditions that allow your future to grow. Because people love to say, "Be open," but they rarely pay the bill for your openness. They tell you to enjoy life, but they do not pay your debt. They tell you to buy it, but they do not pay your emergency. They tell you not to be boring, but they do not sleep with your anxiety. They tell you to help because you are doing better now, but they do not rebuild your margin afterward. This does not mean you become cold. It means you become responsible. Responsible for what you reveal. Responsible for what you accept. Responsible for what you promise. Responsible for what you let people expect from you. Because one of the most expensive things in life is unmanaged expectation. People expecting you to pay, expecting you to lend, expecting you to show up, expecting you to maintain a lifestyle, expecting you to prove that you are successful, expecting you to be generous because your situation improved, expecting you to explain why you said no. And if you do not have boundaries, expectations become invoices. They may not arrive on paper, but you pay them with money, with stress, with guilt, with resentment, with time, with attention, with the slow feeling that your life is no longer being directed by your priorities. That is when income becomes public property. Everyone has a reason. Everyone has an emergency. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has a suggestion. Everyone has a story. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, your own future becomes quiet. Too quiet. You stop hearing it. You stop asking what your money was supposed to do for you. You stop asking what kind of life you were trying to build. You stop asking whether your generosity is still healthy. You stop asking whether your lifestyle is still chosen or just maintained. And this is where many people make a subtle mistake. They think being good means having no financial boundaries. They think love means saying yes. They think loyalty means giving beyond what is sustainable. They think gratitude means publicly naming every person who helped them. They think ambition means announcing every plan. They think confidence means revealing numbers. But maturity is more precise than that. You can love people and still have limits. You can be generous and still have structure. You can be grateful and still protect privacy. You can be ambitious and still be quiet. You can be successful and still refuse to turn your money into a performance. In fact, you may need to, because if your money becomes performance, it stops serving only your life. It starts serving your image. And image is hungry. Image always wants more. More proof, more updates, more visible progress, more signs that you are becoming someone. But freedom often moves in the opposite direction. Freedom asks for less noise, less explanation, less dependence, less need to impress, less emotional spending, less automatic upgrading, less public access to private decisions. And at first, that can feel like losing, because people may not notice your progress. They may think you are still the same. They may think you are too careful, too serious, too quiet, too slow, too unwilling to enjoy. But that is the price of building something solid before showing anything impressive. The foundation stage is not photogenic. Nobody claps for a foundation. Nobody posts a picture of discipline. Nobody envies your emergency fund. Nobody gets excited because you did not buy something. Nobody congratulates you for not touching money you promised yourself you would protect. But foundations do not exist to be admired. They exist to hold weight. And if you skip the foundation because you want the visible part first, you may get attention before you get stability. That is dangerous. Attention can arrive before strength. Recognition can arrive before structure. A lifestyle can expand before the person can support it. And then one hard season reveals the truth. The image was taller than the foundation. That is when the collapse feels personal, but it was structural. This is why the goal is not to look disciplined. The goal is to become structurally harder to break, harder to pressure, harder to manipulate, harder to rush, harder to tempt, harder to shame, harder to pull back into patterns you are trying to outgrow. That is what margin does. Margin makes you harder to break, not invincible. Not rich overnight, not immune to pain, but harder to break. And for many people, that would already change everything. Because they are not asking for luxury first. They are asking for breathing room. They are asking for a life where one bad week does not erase their dignity. They are asking for the ability to think before reacting. They are asking for the possibility of building something instead of always recovering from something. That is where real financial change begins, not with a fantasy of becoming rich. With the first layer of protection, the first layer of silence, the first layer of separation between your money and your impulses, the first layer between your plans and other people's opinions, the first layer between your income and your image. Because without that layer, everything touches everything. Your emotions touch your spending. Your family touches your savings. Your ego touches your income. Your boredom touches your credit card. Your insecurity touches your lifestyle. Your need for validation touches your future. And when everything touches everything, nothing is protected. That is not a financial life. That is an open house. And everyone, including your worst impulses, has a key. And this open house is exactly why some people never understand where their money went. They look at the account, they look at the month, they look at the receipts, and they say, I do not know what happened, but something did happen. Their money was not stolen by one enemy. It was invited out through many doors. A little door called convenience. A little door called boredom. A little door called guilt. A little door called comparison. A little door called, I work hard, so I deserve this. A little door called, I do not want to look cheap. A little door called, I will fix it next month. And next month arrives already wounded. Because the next month is not truly new. It is carrying the consequences of the old one. That is how financial fragility repeats, not as one dramatic failure, as a rhythm of receiving, reacting, spending, covering, promising, and starting again. And if you do that long enough, it begins to feel like personality. You say, I am just bad with money, but maybe that is not true. Maybe you are not bad with money. Maybe your life has been designed so that money never has a chance to stay. That is different, because if you believe you are the problem, you feel shame. But if you understand the design is the problem, you can redesign it. And this matters. You cannot insult yourself into financial freedom. You cannot hate yourself into discipline. You cannot build a better system by repeating that you are weak. Self-hatred does not create structure. It creates exhaustion, and an exhausted person eventually buys relief. So the first practical move is not to become a different human overnight. It is to make the wrong decision harder. That sounds simple, but it is powerful. Make spending less automatic. Make saving less optional. Make silence more natural. Make your goals less available to people who do not deserve access. Make your future harder to rob. You do that with friction. Friction is not punishment. Friction is a door. It says, wait, are we sure? It gives your wiser self enough time to arrive. Because the impulsive self arrives early. The anxious self arrives early. The insecure self arrives early. The tired self arrives early. The version of you that wants comfort arrives early. The version of you that wants validation arrives early. But the strategic self often arrives later. After the emotion cools, after the desire loses its costume, after the pressure stops feeling like destiny, after the offer no longer looks like the last chance on earth. That is why waiting is not passive. Waiting is a financial weapon. You wait before buying. You wait before committing. You wait before telling people the plan. You wait before lending money. You wait before upgrading your lifestyle. You wait before turning a temporary income into a permanent expense. You wait before deciding that a better month means a more expensive life. This waiting does not make you slow. It makes you difficult to capture. And modern life is designed to capture you quickly. One-click purchase, saved cards, limited time offers, notifications, recommendations, personalized ads, flash sales, influencers showing you the life you are supposed to want. Apps that know when you are bored. Platforms that know what you looked at yesterday. Stores that know how to make a desire feel urgent. The world has become extremely skilled at removing friction from spending. So if you do not put friction back, you are fighting an entire machine with mood and intention. You will lose. Not every time, but often enough. And then you will call it lack of discipline, when it was really bad architecture. Your financial life needs architecture. Not just motivation. Architecture means the money moves before your mood touches it. Architecture means your savings are not waiting politely at the end of the month. Architecture means your emergency fund is not mixed with your spending account. Architecture means your investments are not dependent on whether you had a good week emotionally. Architecture means your rules are decided before pressure arrives. Because pressure is a terrible moment to invent principles. When someone asks for money and you feel guilty, that is not the moment to create your lending policy. When you just got paid and feel powerful, that is not the moment to decide your lifestyle. When you are sad at night and scrolling, that is not the moment to decide what you deserve. When someone asks what you earn in a casual conversation, that is not the moment to decide how private your financial life should be. Decide earlier, in calm, with paper, with numbers, with honesty. With the version of you that is not trying to impress anyone. That is how adults build protection, not by hoping they will behave well forever, but by accepting that they are human and designing around that truth. You know what tempts you. You know when you spend. You know who pressures you. You know which conversations weaken you. You know which apps turn boredom into purchases. You know which people make you feel behind. You know which situations make you want to prove something. So stop pretending you do not know. This is not about judging yourself. It is about telling the truth early enough to still change something. If a certain person always turns your progress into an obligation, stop sharing numbers. If a certain app always turns stress into spending, remove the app. If a certain account makes you feel poor no matter how much you improve, stop feeding your insecurity with it. If a certain lifestyle decision would make you look better but reduce your options, pause it. If a certain purchase only makes sense when you are emotional, wait. If a certain plan loses power when you keep it private, maybe it was not a plan. Maybe it was a performance. That distinction hurts because many people do not actually want the thing. They want the feeling of being seen as the kind of person who does the thing. They do not want the business. They want the announcement. They do not want the investment process. They want the identity of being an investor. They do not want the discipline of building. They want the applause of beginning. They do not want freedom. They want the aesthetic of freedom. And aesthetics are expensive. The aesthetic of success, the aesthetic of intelligence, the aesthetic of travel, the aesthetic of wealth, The aesthetic of being healed, the aesthetic of being independent. Modern life sells aesthetics faster than it sells reality. And people buy them because reality takes longer. Reality is repetitive. Reality asks for patience. Reality asks for boring months. Reality asks for quiet decisions. Reality asks for saying no when nobody understands. Reality asks for not upgrading even when you could. Reality asks for protecting money that your emotions want to touch. Reality asks for building something before describing yourself as the kind of person who has built it. That is why many people prefer the symbol. The symbol is immediate. A new device can symbolize progress today. A dinner can symbolize status tonight. A trip can symbolize freedom this weekend. A purchase can symbolize a new identity before that identity exists. But symbols fade. And when they fade, the old feeling comes back. So you buy another symbol, then another, and the gap between who you look like and how free you actually are becomes wider. That gap is dangerous because it creates a private shame. From the outside, your life looks better. But inside, you know how little room you have. You know how much depends on everything going right. You know how many payments are waiting. You know how quickly confidence would disappear if the income stopped. You know how much of the lifestyle is being maintained, not enjoyed. And that private shame often creates more spending. Because people do not like to look at the gap. So they decorate it. They add another object, another plan, another promise, another public signal. But decoration is not repair. You cannot decorate your way out of fragility. You have to rebuild. And rebuilding starts with a brutal inventory, not just of expenses, of obligations. What are you maintaining that no longer serves you? What did you buy because a previous version of you needed to feel successful? What are you still paying for because you were embarrassed to choose the simpler option? What do you keep because letting it go would feel like admitting a mistake? What subscriptions, habits, relationships, loans, and lifestyle expectations are quietly taxing your future? What part of your life would you not choose again, but you keep funding because it is already there? That question is important because many people do not live by choice. They live by continuation. They keep paying for old identities, old decisions, old promises, old emotional purchases, old attempts to belong, old ways of proving they were not poor anymore, old ways of proving they were worthy, old ways of proving they were not behind. And those old decisions become rent collectors. They knock every month. They collect from your present. They reduce your future. And because they feel familiar, you stop questioning them. This is where the replacement test becomes powerful, not as a minimalist trend, as a financial mirror. If something disappeared today, would you buy it again? If the answer is no, why is it still occupying space in your life? If that habit disappeared today, would you rebuild it? If that subscription disappeared today, would you restart it? If that social obligation disappeared today, would you ask for it back? If that lifestyle expectation disappeared today, would you choose it again? Be careful with your answer, because the answer may reveal that part of your life is not being lived. It is being stored. Stored objects, stored identities, stored guilt, stored expectations, stored versions of yourself you no longer respect, but still finance. And storage has a cost, not only physical storage, mental storage. Everything you own, owe, maintain, explain, and perform takes a small piece of attention, a small piece of future income, a small piece of decision-making capacity, a small piece of emotional bandwidth. At first, it feels manageable. Then one day, you feel tired and cannot explain why. Maybe you are tired because too many things in your life are quietly asking to be maintained, not loved, maintained. There is a difference. Something that gives you real value returns energy, utility, peace, health, income, or meaning. Something that only demands maintenance without returning value is not an asset in your life. It is a small employer. And you work for it. You work for the car. You work for the apartment. You work for the image. You work for the subscriptions. You work for the expectations. You work for the person who expects help because you once revealed too much. You work for the old purchase. You work for the old version of yourself. And then you wonder why your income increased, but your life did not feel lighter. Because income alone does not make life lighter. Removing unnecessary weight does. There are two ways to increase freedom. Earn more. Need less from what does not matter. Most people only focus on the first, because the first sounds exciting. The second sounds like loss. But needing less from what does not matter can be a form of wealth. Needing less approval. Needing fewer upgrades. Needing fewer explanations. Needing fewer purchases to regulate your mood. Needing fewer people to know what you are doing. Needing fewer symbols to believe you are progressing. That is not small. That is power. Because the less your identity depends on external confirmation, the less expensive your life becomes. And the less expensive your life becomes, the more of your income can become margin. And the more margin you have, the more choices you have. And the more choices you have, the less fear controls you. This is the chain. Not glamorous, but real. Less unnecessary need. More margin, more choice, less fear. That chain can change a life. But it requires you to define something the market does not want you to define. Enough. What is enough? Enough house? Enough car. Enough phone. Enough clothing. Enough restaurants. Enough travel. Enough lifestyle. Enough proof. Enough comfort. Enough visible success. Most people never define enough, so enough keeps moving. They reach one level and normalize it. Then they need the next, then the next, then the next. The new level becomes ordinary. The old dream becomes the new minimum. And the person is confused because they are earning more but still feel behind. That is lifestyle inflation with an emotional engine. Not just spending more because you can. Spending more because your nervous system keeps adapting to the new normal and demanding a new signal. If you do not define enough, the world will define it for you. And the world profits when you feel unfinished. It profits when you feel almost there. Almost successful. Almost attractive. Almost respected. Almost free. Almost adult. Almost secure. Almost enough. That word, almost, is a goldmine for someone else. Because a person who feels almost enough keeps buying, keeps proving, keeps upgrading, keeps comparing, keeps trying to close an identity gap with external objects. But enough is not found by consuming endlessly. Enough is defined, chosen, protected, practiced. At first, it can feel like rebellion, because you are saying, I could spend more, but I will not make that my new normal. I could upgrade, but this still works. I could show more, but I do not need the audience. I could say yes, but that would weaken my margin. I could look richer, but I would rather become harder to break. That last line matters. Would you rather look richer or become harder to break? Because those are not always the same path. Sometimes looking richer makes you easier to break. More payments, more exposure, more expectation, more maintenance, more need to keep the image alive. Sometimes becoming harder to break looks unimpressive. A boring emergency fund, a modest car, a smaller apartment than you could technically afford, a phone that still works, a private investment habit, a quiet plan, a refusal nobody understands. But when pressure comes, the unimpressive life may stand, and the impressive one may panic. That is the test. Pressure reveals structure, not intention, not aesthetic, not confidence, structure. And structure is built before pressure. You cannot suddenly become financially calm in the middle of an emergency if you spent years making calm impossible. You cannot suddenly become private when everyone is already used to having access to your numbers. You cannot suddenly become selective with obligations if you trained everyone to expect automatic yes. You cannot suddenly become patient if every system in your life rewards impulse. You build those muscles earlier, in small, boring, repeated ways. You say no when the consequence is small, so you can say no when the consequence is big. You keep quiet about small plans, so you can protect bigger ones. You save small amounts, so your identity becomes someone who retains money. You resist small upgrades, so lifestyle inflation does not control every raise. You make small rules, so pressure does not invent your behavior later. This is how margin becomes identity. At first it is a tactic, then it becomes a habit, then it becomes a way of seeing. Then it becomes a standard. Eventually, you stop asking, can I afford this? And you start asking better questions. Does this strengthen me? Does this weaken me? Does this create room? Does this create pressure? Does this serve my life or my image? Does this help my future or only soothe my mood? Does this need to be public? Does this need to be now? Does this need to be mine? Those questions are not dramatic, but they are dangerous to the old version of you. Because they interrupt the automatic life. And the automatic life is where most financial leakage lives. Nobody chooses consciously to lose years. Nobody says, I want to trade my future for random purchases and fragile validation. Nobody says, I want to work hard and still have no room. Nobody says, I want my income to become a pass-through system for everyone else's priorities. But they live that way because they never interrupt the automatic. The automatic yes. The automatic upgrade. The automatic explanation. The automatic purchase, the automatic loan, the automatic lifestyle expansion, the automatic desire to be seen, the automatic belief that more income will fix what only better structure can fix. And here is another uncomfortable truth. Some people do not need more money first. They need to stop leaking the money they already have into identities they no longer want. That does not mean income does not matter. Of course it matters. Low income is real. Inflation is real. Medical costs are real. Family obligations are real. Housing costs are real. Unfair systems are real. Nobody serious should pretend that personal discipline magically erases structural difficulty. But difficulty does not cancel agency. It makes agency more valuable. When the environment is hard, every protected decision matters more. Every unnecessary leak hurts more. Every small margin matters more. Every avoidable debt matters more. Every moment of silence matters more. Every refusal matters more. If you come from a place without a safety net, you cannot afford to imitate people who have one. That sentence may sound harsh, but it is true. Some people can recover from stupid spending because their family, assets, inheritance, partner, or social network catches them. Others cannot. For them, one reckless season can delay years. So copying lifestyles without copying safety nets is financial self-sabotage. You see the purchase. You do not see the backup. You see the trip. You do not see the parents paying rent. You see the business risk. You do not see the family wealth behind the failure. You see the aesthetic. You do not see the cushion. And then you compare your life to a picture that does not reveal the support structure. That comparison can make you act irresponsibly in the name of not feeling behind. But you are not behind just because you are building differently. You are not behind because you protect margin. You are not behind because you refuse a lifestyle you cannot sustain. You are not behind because your progress is quiet. You are not behind because you are building the foundation first. You may be doing the most adult thing possible. You may be refusing to gamble your future for a performance that only impresses people for a moment. This is especially important when you begin to improve. The first stage of improvement is dangerous, not because you are doing badly, because you are doing a little better. A little better is where many people destroy the chance of becoming much better. They get a raise, they start earning extra. They make a good sale, they receive a bonus, they get a new client. And instead of letting that improvement become margin, they turn it into proof. Proof that they can spend. Proof that they are not poor. Proof that they deserve more. Proof that the hard season is over. But a good season is not a permanent identity. A good month is not a new financial class. A raise is not permission to erase discipline. Extra income is not automatically lifestyle income. Sometimes extra income is escape money, repair money, foundation money, debt reduction money, opportunity money, freedom money. But if you spend it before assigning it, the world will assign it for you. And the world usually assigns it to comfort, image, and convenience. So assign it first, before emotion touches it, before relatives hear about it, before friends invite you to celebrate it, before your old self starts negotiating with your future. Create a rule. Every increase gets divided, some for present quality of life. Because yes, you are alive now, some for protection, some for investment or future capacity, some for debt reduction. If debt is stealing oxygen, the percentages can vary. The principle should not. A raise must not become a cage upgrade. A raise should buy at least some freedom. Otherwise, what was the point? To work more, earn more, spend more, need more, and still be afraid? That is not ambition. That is a treadmill with better lighting. And many people live exactly there, running faster, looking better, going nowhere. They are tired, but they call it progress. They are obligated, but they call it success. They are overextended, but they call it adulthood. They are anxious, but they call it responsibility. They are trapped, but the cage has improved, so they feel ungrateful for questioning it. Question it anyway. Gratitude does not require financial blindness. You can be grateful for what you have and still admit that the structure is wrong. You can enjoy some comfort and still refuse to let comfort become captivity. You can want a better life and still reject the version of a better life that makes you weaker. That is a mature relationship with money, not worshiping it, not hating it, not using it as a costume, not pretending it does not matter, seeing it clearly. Money is a tool, a dangerous tool if it touches unexamined emotions, a powerful tool if it serves defined priorities, a quiet tool if you stop turning it into theater. And maybe that is the deeper issue. A lot of people do not have a money problem only. They have a priority problem. Their money does not know who to obey. Does it obey the future, the ego, the family, the algorithm, the tired body, the lonely night, the old wound, the need to be admired, the fear of being judged, the market, the emergency, The person asking for help? If you never decide, your money obeys the loudest voice, and the loudest voice is rarely your future. Your future is quiet. It does not scream. It does not send notifications. It does not create urgency. It does not flatter you. It does not shame you. It just arrives one day and asks what you did with the years. That is why you have to speak for it now. You have to defend your future before it has a voice. You defend it by keeping margin, by saving before spending, by investing before performing, by saying no before resentment, by choosing enough before the market chooses endless hunger for you, by staying quiet before the plan becomes entertainment for other people, by remembering that the version of you 10 years from now is also someone you are responsible for. That version cannot fight for itself yet. You fight for it with the money you do not waste, with the debt you do not take, with the lifestyle you do not inflate, with the plan you do not expose too early, with the boundary you do not apologize for, with the purchase you let pass because it would have weakened you. That is not deprivation. That is loyalty. Loyalty to your future self. And if that sounds too abstract, make it practical. Imagine yourself 5 years from now. Not rich, just freer, less rushed, less scared, less obligated, with fewer stupid payments, with more liquidity, with a stronger skill, with a small investment habit, with less need to impress, with more ability to reject bad options, with a quieter financial life. Now ask yourself, what would that person thank you for not buying? What would that person thank you for not saying? What would that person thank you for not promising? What would that person thank you for not turning into a monthly payment? What would that person thank you for protecting when nobody else cared? That is where the answer begins. Not in a fantasy of sudden wealth, in the invisible decisions that make future freedom possible. And yes, some of those decisions will feel boring. Some will feel restrictive. Some will make you feel behind. Some will make you look less impressive. Some will make people misunderstand you. Let them. You are not building a life for people who only see the surface. You're building a life you can actually stand inside. There is a difference. Many people build lives that look good from outside, but feel suffocating from inside. A beautiful prison is still a prison. And if the cost of keeping that prison beautiful is your peace, your choices, and your future, then the beauty is too expensive. So the question becomes practical. What do you do now? Not someday. Not when you earn more. Not when life becomes calm. Not when every problem disappears. Now, because margin is not built after life gets easy. Margin is built because life does not stay easy. And the first step is not dramatic. You do not need to change your entire life in 1 week. You do not need to become extreme. You do not need to punish yourself for every mistake you ever made. You need to start seeing clearly. That is where the change begins. Clarity before intensity. Most people try intensity first. They get angry. They make a promise. They cut everything for a few days. They say, now I am serious. They create a strict plan. They feel powerful for a moment. Then life happens. Stress comes back. Tiredness comes back. Old habits come back. The emotional need comes back. And the plan collapses because it was built on mood, not structure. Do not build on mood. Build on evidence. Look at your last 3 months, not your ideal month. Not the month you want to show someone. Your real months. Where did the money go? Where did the energy go? Where did the attention go? Where did your peace go? And do not only look for big expenses. Big expenses are obvious. Look for patterns. The repeated small decision. The automatic purchase. The casual transfer. The subscription you do not use. The social plan you did not want. The gift you gave from guilt. The meal you bought because you were tired. The upgrade you justified because the old thing felt embarrassing. The money you spent to avoid feeling behind. That is where the map is. Your real financial life is hidden in repetition. Not in what you say you value, in what keeps happening. If the same leak appears every month, it is not an accident. It is a system. Maybe a bad system, but still a system. And once you see the system, you can redesign it. The first redesign is simple. Separate your money before your emotions touch it. This is not poetic. This is practical. If all your money sits in one place, your mind sees one pile. And one pile is dangerous because the money for food, the money for rent, the money for emergencies, the money for future freedom, and the money for random impulses all appear emotionally available. So separate them, even if the amounts are small. A spending account, a bills account, an emergency account, a future account, a debt reduction plan if debt is eating your oxygen. You are not separating money because you are weak. You are separating money because you are serious. A serious person does not leave their future mixed with weekend impulses. A serious person does not leave emergency money sitting next to entertainment money. A serious person does not let every peso compete in the same room. Give your money a job before the world gives it one. Because the world is fast. The market is fast. Your cravings are fast. Family pressure can be fast. Comparison is fast. Boredom is fast. Your future is slower. So you must protect it first. The second redesign is this: create waiting rules, not vague intentions. Rules: a non-essential purchase waits at least 24 hours. A bigger purchase waits longer. A lifestyle upgrade waits until you know whether the income behind it is stable. A financial promise waits until you check your real numbers. A loan to someone waits until you decide whether you can lose that money without losing peace. A public announcement waits until the action exists in reality. Waiting protects you from the version of yourself that confuses emotion with truth. Because when you want something, the mind becomes a lawyer. It argues, it justifies, it finds reasons. It says, this is useful. It says, this is different. It says, this is the last time. It says, you deserve it. It says, you can fix it later. It says, you have been working hard. And maybe some of that is true. But truth spoken by an impulse is not always complete. So wait, let the desire survive daylight. Let it survive a normal mood. Let it survive a night of sleep. Let it survive the question, what does this do to my margin? If it still makes sense, decide calmly. If it disappears, it was not a real desire. It was weather. And you should not build financial obligations from weather. The third redesign is to stop converting every improvement into a permanent expense. This destroys people quietly. They earn a little more, then they upgrade something permanent. Then the new expense becomes normal. Then the next raise is needed just to breathe again. Then they upgrade again, and the cycle repeats. This is not growth. It is captivity with better decoration. So when income improves, pause. Do not let the old version of you grab the new money immediately. Divide it. Some can improve your present life. That matters. You are not a machine. You are not building freedom, so you can hate every day until some imaginary future. But some of the new money must buy distance from fear. Some must reduce fragility. Some must go to liquidity. Some must go to debt reduction if debt is heavy. Some must go to investment or skills. Some must go to the version of you that is trying to stop living paycheck to paycheck. If every raise becomes lifestyle, you will always need the next raise. And needing the next raise is not freedom. It is dependence with ambition. The fourth redesign is to define enough. This may be the hardest one, because modern life trains you to leave enough undefined. Undefined enough is profitable. For someone else, if you never define enough, everything can be sold to you as the missing piece. A better phone, a better body, a better room, a better car, a better trip, a better version of your life, a better proof that you are finally becoming someone. But if you define enough, the spell weakens. You can say this is enough for now. My phone is enough. My car is enough. My clothes are enough. My lifestyle is enough while I build. My public proof is enough. My need to explain is enough. This does not kill ambition. It protects it, because ambition without enough becomes endless hunger. And endless hunger is easy to monetize. The market loves a person who never feels complete. The market loves a person who feels almost successful, almost respected, almost attractive, almost secure, almost free. Almost enough, because almost keeps buying. But a person who defines enough becomes harder to sell to. They can still buy, but they buy from choice, not emptiness. They can still enjoy, but enjoyment does not become a leash. They can still improve, but improvement does not automatically become performance. They can still want more, but wanting more no longer means despising what already works. That is a different kind of power. Quiet, unfashionable, extremely useful. The fifth redesign is to reduce financial exposure. Stop making your money available as a topic. You do not need to lie. You do not need to act mysterious. You simply need to stop handing out information that creates pressure. If someone asks how much you earn, you can answer without numbers. I am managing. I am working on my finances. I prefer not to talk numbers. It depends on the month. I keep that private, simple, calm, no drama. If someone asks what you are building and the plan is still young, you can say, I am working on something. I will talk about it when it is more developed. I am still testing it. I am not ready to share details yet. Again, no drama. Privacy does not require aggression. Boundaries do not require a speech. The more you explain, the more you invite negotiation. and some things are not open for negotiation. Your margin is one of them. The sixth redesign is to give generosity a structure. Because if you never structure generosity, guilt will structure it for you. And guilt is a terrible financial planner. Decide in advance what help means for you. How much can you give? How often? To whom? Under what conditions? What is a gift? What is a loan? What requires a written agreement? What is outside your capacity? What kind of help can you offer that is not money? Because sometimes money is not the only support. Sometimes support is time, information, a contact, a ride, a meal, a plan, a conversation, a boundary, a refusal that prevents someone from depending on you in a way neither of you can sustain. This may sound cold to people who confuse love with financial availability, but real support must survive reality. If helping someone destroys your stability, creates resentment, and puts your own future at risk, that help is not clean. It may be emotional, it may be noble in appearance, but it is not clean. Clean generosity has limits. Clear generosity has numbers. Healthy generosity does not require you to betray your foundation every time someone else has a crisis. And yes, sometimes you will help anyway. Because life is human. Because people matter. Because emergencies exist. But even then, you need to know what you are doing. Not act from panic. Not act from fear of being judged. Not act because you cannot tolerate someone being disappointed. Disappointment is not always a sign that you did something wrong. Sometimes it is the sound of a new boundary being born. The seventh redesign is to stop treating comfort as proof of progress. Comfort is good, but comfort can become a trap when you use it to avoid building. A comfortable cage is still a cage. A slightly better paycheck can make the cage feel less urgent. A nicer apartment can make the cage feel more acceptable. A new purchase can make the cage feel like a reward. But if you still cannot move, refuse, wait, choose, or survive pressure, the cage is still there. So ask harder questions. Did this comfort increase my freedom? Did this purchase reduce my stress long-term or only distract me? Did this upgrade improve my life or just raise the cost of maintaining my image? Did this decision create more room or less room? Did this yes come from generosity or fear? Did this no protect something important? Those questions are uncomfortable because they remove the story. And many financial decisions survive only because of the story around them. I deserve it. I needed it. It was a good deal. It was only this once. It makes me feel better. It is an investment in myself. Sometimes that is true. Sometimes it is costume language for an impulse. You have to be honest enough to tell the difference. Not cruel, honest. Cruelty says, I am stupid for buying this. Honesty says, I bought this because I was stressed, and I need a better way to handle stress. Cruelty says, I have no discipline. Honesty says, my system makes impulse too easy. Cruelty says, I always fail. Honesty says, this pattern has a trigger, and I can redesign the trigger. That difference matters, because shame wants escape, clarity wants correction, and correction is what you need, not drama, not self-hatred. Correction. Small, repeated, boring correction. That is how people change their financial life. They close one leak, then another, then another. They protect one amount, then a little more. They say no once, then again. They keep one plan private. Then they notice the peace of not having to defend it. They wait before one purchase. Then they realize the desire disappeared. They keep the old thing working. Then they notice they did not die from not upgrading. They survive the discomfort. And every time they survive it, the old pattern loses authority. That is the hidden process. You are not only saving money. You are training identity. You are teaching yourself, I can have money and not spend it immediately. I can want something and not obey the want. I can be asked a question and not answer everything. I can feel behind and not perform progress. I can feel guilt and still keep a boundary. I can earn more and not surrender the entire increase to lifestyle. That identity is worth more than one perfect budget. Because budgets fail when identity disagrees. A person who sees themselves as someone who cannot retain money will find a way to lose it. A person who sees money as emotional relief will keep spending under stress. A person who sees privacy as shame will keep revealing too much. A person who sees boundaries as cruelty will keep overgiving. So the financial work is also identity work. Not in a soft, decorative way. In a practical way. You become someone who retains. Someone who waits. Someone who chooses. Someone who protects. Someone who can enjoy without being owned. Someone who can be generous without becoming available for extraction. Someone who can improve without turning improvement into theater. Someone who can earn more without automatically needing more. That is not easy, but it is possible. And it starts with making your life less open to forces that do not care about your freedom. The market does not care if you are free. It cares if you buy. The algorithm does not care if you are peaceful. It cares if you stay. The lender does not care if the payment makes you anxious. It cares if you pay. The person pressuring you may not care whether your margin survives. They care whether their need is solved. The image you created does not care whether you are tired. It demands maintenance. So you have to care. You have to become the person in your own life who protects the margin. Nobody else is coming to do that for you. And if someone does come, be careful. Because help without clarity can become control. That is why margin matters so much. Margin reduces the number of people who can control you through urgency. A person with no margin is easier to pressure, easier to rush, easier to shame, easier to underpay, easier to overcharge, easier to guilt, easier to trap. A person with margin can pause, and a pause changes power. A pause lets you ask, do I actually want this? Can I actually afford this? Is this actually my responsibility? Is this actually urgent? Is this actually aligned with the life I say I want? Many bad decisions cannot survive a real pause. They depend on speed. That is why sellers push urgency. That is why emotional requests often come with pressure. That is why your own impulses want immediate action. Speed bypasses wisdom. Margin gives wisdom time to arrive. And maybe this is the simplest way to understand it. Poverty of money is one thing. Poverty of options is another. And many people with income still live in poverty of options. They cannot leave, cannot wait, cannot refuse, cannot rest, cannot disappoint, cannot be quiet, cannot stop upgrading, cannot stop proving, cannot absorb pressure, cannot protect the future from the present. That is the deeper poverty. The poverty of having no room to think, no room to choose, no room to recover, no room to build, no room to be strategic, no room to be patient, no room to be private, no room to become someone else. Margin is the creation of room. Room between income and spending. Room between desire and purchase. Room between plan and announcement. Room between someone's request and your answer. Room between pressure and decision. Room between who you were and who you are trying to become. And that room is where freedom begins, not at the finish line, not when you are rich, not when everything is solved. It begins the first time you create space where there used to be automatic reaction. The first time you do not buy. The first time you do not reveal. The first time you do not say yes from guilt. The first time you protect money before spending. The first time you define enough. The first time you let someone misunderstand you and continue anyway. The first time you choose future peace over present proof. That is when something shifts, quietly. Nobody may see it. Nobody may applaud it. Nobody may understand why it matters. But you will feel it. You will feel it when an emergency does not destroy you. You will feel it when a bad offer no longer owns you. You will feel it when you can walk away without panic. You will feel it when your money stays long enough to become a tool. You will feel it when your plans grow stronger because fewer people have touched them. You will feel it when you realize you do not need to perform every improvement. You will feel it when your life becomes less expensive to defend. That is freedom. Not the loud kind. Not the cinematic kind. Not the kind sold in advertisements. A quieter kind. The kind that lives in your nervous system. The kind that lets you sleep. The kind that lets you choose. The kind that lets you say no and remain whole. The kind that lets you help without collapsing. The kind that lets you build without explaining every brick. The kind that lets your future have a seat at the table. And maybe that is the real point. Your future needs representation. Because your present self is loud. Your present self wants relief. Your present self wants comfort. Your present self wants recognition. Your present self wants the purchase. Your present self wants to answer the question. Your present self wants to say yes and avoid discomfort. Your future self is quieter, but not less real. So every time you choose margin, you are voting for the person you have not become yet. Every time you refuse a useless expense, you vote for that person. Every time you keep a plan private, you vote for that person. Every time you separate money before spending, you vote for that person. Every time you define enough, you vote for that person. Every time you let an impulse pass without obeying it, you vote for that person. And over time, those votes become a life. Not immediately, not magically, not perfectly, but visibly enough that one day you look back and realize something. You did not become free because one huge event saved you. You became freer because hundreds of small leaks stopped controlling you. You became freer because you stopped confusing motion with progress. You became freer because you stopped treating money as proof and started treating it as protection. You became freer because you stopped letting the loudest need decide where your resources go. You became freer because you built a life with room. And room is underrated. Room is not glamorous, but room lets you breathe. Room lets you think. Room lets you recover. Room lets you take an opportunity when it appears. Room lets you leave what is damaging you. Room lets you hold your dignity when pressure arrives. Room lets you stop being available for every crisis, every opinion, every impulse, every sales pitch, every emotional demand. Room is the beginning of power. So do not ask only how to make more money. Ask what would happen if more of the money you already touch actually stayed in service of your freedom. Do not ask only what you can buy. Ask what you no longer want to maintain. Do not ask only how to look successful. Ask how to become harder to break. Do not ask only what you deserve today. Ask what your future deserves from you. And when the next purchase appears, pause. When the next person asks too much, pause. When the next opportunity feels urgent, pause. When the next raise arrives, pause. When the next emotional need tries to become a financial decision, pause. Inside that pause, you may find the version of yourself that has been waiting to take control. Not louder, not flashier, not more impressive, more solid. And maybe that is what you needed all along. Not a more expensive life, a life with more room. Not more people impressed by your progress. More evidence that your progress can survive pressure. Not more things that say you are doing well. More freedom to choose what doing well actually means. So here is the final question. If your income stopped tomorrow, how much of what you call success would still stand? If that question makes you uncomfortable, do not run from it. That discomfort may be the first honest financial signal you have listened to in a long time. Because maybe the goal is not to keep decorating the cage. Maybe the goal is to build enough margin to finally open the door.